So, the topic for discussion today is what's called the Big Three. So, specifically, the Big Three, when most people talk about it, refer to bench press, squat, and deadlift, which is the three big lifts of powerlifting. What I'm going to say here and talk about is taking that idea of having these three main lifts and what it actually means and what we can do with that idea if we want to organize our training for like any purposes that we can think of. So if you go and talk with a random person in a gym, particularly one that's primarily a barbell gym, the first question you often get when you strike up conversation is, bro, how much do you bench press? As a measure of strength, and well, obviously it's just banter and who can lift the most. The ones who are a little bit more in the know will, like how much do you squat or how much do you deadlift as the true measure of strength. So the big three, like your numbers in those, is seen as a measure of how strong you are and your overall strength and development. And in powerlifting, it is the numbers that is going to count at the end if you can actually put them up when competition comes around. So they say something about our, albeit in a very specific circumstances, and they say something about our maximal strength. So the other thing to note is that these three cover, one is a pulling pattern, a deadlift is a back and pulling pattern, one is a squatting pattern, and another is a pushing exercise. So broadly speaking, they cover most of the body, which is to say if all these numbers are high, and they are consistent, then it says something about you being overall strong and having a well-developed body. If one of them is out of whack, it says something like you have a great deadlift, but your bench is not so good and your squat is not so good. Sometimes that comes down to build. There's certain body proportions will favor certain lifts more than others, and other times it's more down to how you've trained in the past and favoring one lift over the other. Again, comes back to that initial remark I had about go to a gym and then people will talk about like, how much do you bench? And you see this in a lot of gyms that sometimes people have a bigger bench than even their squat, which is really shouldn't be if we consider how the human body is structured and the size of our arms and the size of our legs. There's no reason why you'd find that, but I see that sometimes. So beyond that big three for powerlifting, my contention is that principle, you can apply that to any kind of training that you do. So if you're a hybrid trainer and maybe you don't have access to barbells, or you only want to do one barbell lift and then supplement it with something else, we need to look at those big three and make sure that they fit together, that they complement each other in a sensible way, and that combination makes sense for what it is that you do and what you have available. So a classic combination, the one that I'm fond of, is combining chins and dips as two of the primary lifts. Now the third one, it depends a little bit on, in that context, the third one depends a little bit on your preferences. If you have the skill to do barbell squats, then it's certainly a valid combination. So chin, dips, and back squats. It's good. If you don't have good instruction in squatting, or you don't have a barbell, or for whatever reason, then I would suggest something like a single leg variant, that could be weighted split squats, working up to heavy weights in the split squat, would complete that alternative big three. If you're more into what should we say, kettlebell lifting, then you might have something like either like a double front squat with 2 kettlebells, and then clean and jerk, and then that could be it. That's only 2. I would probably put some kind of rowing or just a weighted chin to balance that one out. So the big 3 should be like, and there's any number of them we could go on, but we'll keep it short for this video. But the basic idea is to take 3 exercises that taken together develops the body from all angles. So you don't develop only strong pressing muscles and don't have any on the other side of the body. The other thing is, if you, and this is where I suggest not shopping around too much, like having a quite short list of primary exercises. If you have that, and let's say chins and dips, coming back to that example, if you can see that and it could be just, I would suggest keeping a track on the working sets. You don't have to go and test the max all the time. But if you can see that your working sets in the dips and the chins are just going up, then you know that you're overall getting stronger. Whereas if you have a tendency, I'll do some chins and the dips now, and then I'll move on to some bench presses, and then I'll come back and I'll do some overhead presses, and then if you rotate through too many exercises, you'll have a tendency to not be too clear on whether you're actually making progress, what it is that's holding you back. And unless you are really specialized and been doing strength for many, many years, then having too many exercises in the mix often leads to this kind of not being exactly sure what's going on. And that's one of the key things that the Big Three really does, is that it simplifies training. It's like, okay, we have these 3 key lifts. How are they doing? Now, that's not to say that that's the only strength work that you can do. You can keep it really minimal and just work on those 3 patterns in various ways, like change. And of course, we have to change things sometimes, like different order, different rep schemes, different intensities, whatever. But just having those in the mix, you'll be quite clear on how the training is progressing. That's not to say that that's the only exercises that you can do, and if you identify something as like the missing or the weak link in that trifecta, and that, again, training history, injuries, build, anything, if you identify one of those 3 as like, okay, this is where I'm proportionately most needing work, then some of the other stuff that you do in your program should probably zero in on that. So an example would be like if your pressing is not so strong and you have some shoulder issues when you do pressing, then putting some extra work into the shoulder and into the triceps to help bring that area up to speed is what would be called for. So what the Big Three really comes down to is just an organizational principle. It should tell you something about how your training is going. It should simplify things. It's like, if these 3 things go well, then over the long haul, I'll get where I need to go. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You can choose, within reason, different combinations depending on who you are, what you have access to, time and energy requirements, and really dissecting those will be a longer video, so we won't go into that now. But it's just to say that it doesn't have to be only bench press, squat and deadlift, though that is a very valid way to approach training, particularly if you have all the things in place to do that. So if nothing else, and if you're a little bit in doubt about where your training is at and what your big three might be, or I should say, if you are at that point, then considering that there's 3 main exercises that you need to focus on and that you need to develop the body in different ways is where it's really at with this insight. So yeah, the big 3. Thank you for watching.